empty everything out.
All right, folks. Thanks for joining us here for another LinkedIn Live session with Soft Ed. I hate to say it, but Kenzie's not with me today. She's got much better things to do. So we went out in the wilds and we found Chris Morrison, principal at Viverus. Say, Chris, say hi.
Hello, folks.
Great. Nice. Very nice hello. So first and foremost, comments. If you make a comment, good, bad, or indifferent, as long as it's respectful, you get put into a raffle for a free Agile class. Agile product management class is probably the most relevant for this topic. So don't hesitate. Put your thoughts, your ideas, your comments into chat. We look forward to hearing from you. So Chris, tell the group a little bit about yourself real quick.
Okay, so I'm an engineer by training, but that's going way back. Got into medical sales early on in my career. Very early on, got into startups. That was more by happenstance, but have spent the last 20 to 25 years launching new products in the medical field. And for the last 15 years, I've put up my own shingle, and this is what I do every day. I help companies position products, get them to market. My real sweet spot is, how do you get that first sale? And how do you go from that first sale to a repeatable sales process that's scalable?
Interesting. That first sale. So in some cases, do you see yourself as a product manager's dream?
Oh, interesting question. So, I'm a sales guy, so I don't usually think from the product manager standpoint, but I've worked very closely with product development, product managers throughout my career, and I've learned that, it's getting that first sales, you really have to be working in partnership and collaboration with, the development side of the house and the product management side of the house. And I've also noticed throughout my career that there's usually a big divide right there, man. Usually those two are clashing. To be successful launching a product, man, you got to be working in lockstep because both are completely dependent on the other.
Interesting, isn't it? That's what I think this session's all about. The sales mindset to the product for product management, the sales mindset, right?
Yep.
I think a lot of cases, product managers get fired up about the technology, get fired up about the capabilities, and get fired up about, wow, this could be really great. This could be really powerful. But they don't consider whether someone will actually buy it.
Yep.
Have you experienced this?
So the number one biggest first problem that every new product has is there a problem in the marketplace that your product solves? Okay. It is by far it is the one and only starting point for whether you're doing product development, whether you're doing sales, whether you're doing marketing, any of those. It's a starting point. It's the one point that most products miss out on going out of the gate. Is that one critical problem that's going to pull your technology into the marketplace. And David, I got to tell you, I'm an engineer, so I get just excited about the technology. But
yeah, but here's this. It's interesting you say that. Is it going to sell? So we have a question about a product owner overcoming pressure. So the interesting thing about a product owner as it relates to product management is a product owner within the SDLC environment. I mean, they are owning the life cycle really of that product, not only when the project is completed, but also the outcome of the product. And the best way you can handle the stresses of that is by keeping your emergent requirement list and your task list in order and prioritizing as tightly as you can. If you could prioritize tightly and you could communicate those priorities, then you can reduce this pressure. You want product management from sales. Like, Chris, the best opportunity is that if a salesperson is talking to product management on a consistent basis, telling them, oh my God, it doesn't have this. Oh my God, it doesn't have, to the point of being annoying, don't you think? I think they should, personally.
From the point of being annoying, I think it's absolutely critical and necessary. I mean, we have if you look at the data out there, David, the failure rate on new product launches, the general knowledge, I can't find the source of it, but it's 90%, somewhere in that range. So I think that they, I don't know if I would use the word annoying, but yes, maybe annoying. But those two groups have to be attached to the hip to be successful. When you're bringing a new product, especially if it's disruptive to market, there is so much risk associated with that. There's just inherent risk of doing something for the very first time. We need to, and this is the biggest problem I see, is we add on to that by imposing self-imposed risk into the process by not connecting a lot of the pieces. And I wouldn't say it's not just product management, sales. It's product management, sales, marketing, product service, and product delivery. All those things are critical to being successful.
Yeah, I hear you. That concentric circle, you put those circles together, right? Venn diagram fashion.
Yep.
But when you hear us talk, you can hear us talk about external and internal product management. So Chris and I are spending time right now. Chris was talking about external product management. We're going to get into that more too. And then when we were talking about product ownership, that's about internal product management. But what Chris is talking about for internal is just the same thing. Your stakeholders, multiple stakeholders are going to, and your sponsor are all going to be pounding you. But, Chris didn't say it'd be annoying, but for me, if you have that flow of honest information coming through, honest and critical information coming through, you're going to be able to track that. And again, prioritize that based on what the customer wants.
Yep.
But here's Chris, here's your magic. How do you go about finding out what the customer wants maybe before you build?
How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Well, so there's lots of best practices around that out there.
Externally, we'll deal with this from an external perspective.
There's lots of best practices out there externally today on how to do this in the external environment. I mean, and we've made a lot of progress. And I think the agile world and the product development world led us into a lot of this with design thinking. And then into design thinking and new product development, and agile kind of led us in that direction from the design side. But the most important thing is to be talking to real customers that actually to buy. But then also going at that with a very methodical, scientific methodology, so you don't bias that data. The other thing, I had a guy I used to work with about he would. Talking about listening with happy ears, hearing, this, bias in your listening and how you construct questions. So you have to go out and you have to really dig into those customers and find out what the critical problems they have, how critical are those problems, how are they solving those problems today? I mean, there's all sorts of ways to get in there, but fundamentally, this is just basic understanding your customers early on and going as deep into that process as you can.
But you actually go to the customer. I mean, in your process that you use from a consultancy standpoint, you're calling customers.
Absolutely. And when I work in the medical field, 90% of the time I'm talking to doctors and surgeons. And I'm getting them on the phone or in a face-to-face meeting for half an hour or 45 minutes or even upwards to an hour. I start the process there, but even when I start the process there, David, man, it's an ongoing process. The other thing I will tell you is the closer you get to the sale, the more higher the quality of your data gets. And the first time you can actually get real data is when you actually ask the customer to pay you something for what you're doing.
Well, here's a great question on that. So how is it possible to understand the real need of clients that are still not your clients? So exactly what you do, Chris. Like so you do something called agile market entry.
Yes.
So how is it possible to understand the real need of clients that are still not your clients? People are busy. How do you go about talking to these people?
So that becomes a critical question, David, and that's why I was kind of bringing up that point I was mentioning. The closer you get to sale, the higher the quality of data. The first time you actually get real data is at the sale point. Now, let me give you this example. So let's step back for a second. So back in the day, going back 20 years ago, let's go back, we didn't do customer discovery. The moment we started doing customer discovery and talk to customer, the quality of our data set went from from not from 1 to 10, it went 1 from 100. So the quality of data went up exponentially. We see another leap in the quality of our customer data when we actually ask them to buy something from us. So, we have another exponential leap in the quality of data. So the first principle I use every time is I try to get as close to a sale as I possibly can at any given point in time I am talking with the customer. So what's an example of that? Long before I have so what's typical in the medical community with the doctor is to pay them an honorarium, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 for their time. Well, here's a critical question. If I can't, I don't do discovery work that way. I make cold calls in the docs, and if I can't get 10 docs to get in on an hour-long discussion with me without offering anything of payment, if I can't do that, that tells me almost as much as what they tell to me when I interview them.
Interesting. So that's the thing that I like about this question is I'll pop the question back up because it's a really good question, is that it's work. You cold call.
This is the hardest. So this is the hardest work you'll do, to get someone to talk to you about an idea and and get them to spend an hour with you, and I'm doing it with physicians and surgeons. These are kind of the busiest people in the world type of thing. And on top of that, the way they get compensated is they get compensated for time. So they got to decide whether they're going to spend an hour with me or whether they're going to do a surgery, do a knee surgery or an eye surgery or do their GI scope. So they're making a decision whether they're going to get paid or they're going to volunteer their time for me from there. And that tells me as much about the problem I'm asking them about as what actually comes out of it.
Exactly. That's really interesting. So if you do 20 calls, you try to do 20 calls, you work it, you get no responses from 20 calls, or maybe have you tested out using LinkedIn connecting?
I've tested LinkedIn. I tested other social media apps. You referrals. You do call. I like to do a certain percentage of all my outreach for these cold calling at some level, whether it be phone, email, LinkedIn, because getting a referral to someone actually inclines them to talk to you a little bit already from a friend to friend.
Oh, the referral. So utilizing the referral. So how do you get to talk to clients who really aren't your clients yet? Can your client give you a referral so you could talk to somebody? But remember, we're not selling. Chris is talking to me. He's not selling people. He's trying to learn if they would buy something.
So here's the most important thing, David. So when you look at the value proposition built around the product, we think problem, feature, benefit, right? And when the product is a mature product, we kind of focus in on feature benefit. When you're launching a disruptive product for the first time, a lot of times your clients, or the people you talk to, aren't even ready to think about the benefits, especially if it's a disruptive. So the thing that you have to focus in on is the problem that's sitting there in the marketplace that's waiting to get solved. If the problem's big enough, if the problem's big enough, if it is killing patients killing patients for a surgeon, and he knows it's killing patients, not that he's killing them, but if this problem occurs, there's an incident rate of death, and it's high, so if there's a big enough problem, you reach out to him and say, hey, listen, I'm solving this problem around deaths associated with knee surgery from infection post-operative knee surgery. If it's a big enough problem, they'll get on the phone and talk with you. If it's not a big enough problem.
Okay, so there's your magic. So as a product manager, and I've worn a product management hat for 25 years, maybe even more, and I still always think like a product manager. My biggest mistake is I didn't get that close to customers, especially in disruptive products. I would normally get the salesperson to potentially feed me information, which is incorrect. So taking a sales mindset to product management is, how are you actively going after your ICP, your ideal customer profile file, and talking to them first and foremost about the problem you're going to solve to see whether that problem is actually worth anything.
Correct. So, and working with the sales reps, I have no problem doing that. But if I'm a product manager guy, I'm not a product manager. I'm a sales guy, but I kind of sit in the middle because of what I've done throughout my career. I kind of do it all.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where you need to sit. You got to sit between marketing, product development, product management, sales. You got to sit in the middle of all that, right next to the customer, to address all the issues you have to deal with around bringing your product to market. So, but if I think about it, I'm thinking about from a product manager's mindset. I have no problem working with sales rep, but you get out into the field with the sales rep. You leverage if you have a sales team, you can
but
work.
Not on that existing product that sales rep is selling. That sales rep is talking about the potential product that you want to bring to market.
Correct. Or go in with your sales rep and you ask the questions of their customer with them. I mean, a lot of times I'm working with startups where we don't actually have the existing relationship with customers in place. But if you have those existing, leverage your resources. But you want to get in there and hear it for yourself if you can.
All right. So that's interesting. This is connecting to the internal product management, project management, SDLC side, because of the mistakes that happen in the future state analysis, right? The external and internal product management, they're basically the same exact thing.
Yep.
Except for one is giving you money.
Yep.
The other's giving you time and use.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Sure. I mean, the external guy, I don't care. As long as they buy, I don't care if they ever use it. The internal guy, they've got to use it.
Well, I'm going to argue with you, David, because especially if you've got if you want to build a long-term business,
yeah.
You
but
carefully use it.
I can fix that. So here's an interesting thing. I can fix that problem internally. Use has to happen. You have to have a hit on use a lot faster. You can't go through as many iterations to fix a problem as an external person can do.
Oh, I got you. So,
like if I have something I know is going to sell, I'm selling it. There's some problems. I'll just fix it.
Yep.
Internally, maybe you get a bad reputation, and nobody's, because it's a closer marketplace. They talk faster.
You've got some of that in the outside marketplace, but you're right. You can shield yourself a little bit more from the outside marketplace. But this is why you've got to do your customer discovery. Even internally, it sounds like, I don't work in that environment, but internally it sounds like that's even more important, to do your customer discovery work and understand the problem that you're actually solving for what did you call them, a sponsor before? That's not term.
Yeah, so you have a spot. Yeah, so internally you have the person with the money.
Yep.
That money person is going to be that sponsor, right? And that sponsor, basically is trying to get an outcome.
Yep.
And then ultimately what you do in the internal environments is you're going to impact a bunch of stakeholders and a bunch of people who utilize the system as you make that change to achieve that outcome. But what happens is they could do the product right, but they're missing more and more now on what type of problem to solve.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two ends of that puzzle, right? One is the problem that they're solving. That's kind of at the front end, to make sure their problems that they're solving for customers, whether it's internal or external, is big enough to make it worthwhile for that customer to buy your product first. But then on the back end, there's a utilization piece, right? Not only do they buy it, and I call this, in the external world, I call it, making the transition from a happy buyer to a highly satisfied customer.
Yep.
And same thing internally. If you only pay attention to getting that happy buyer, but never pay attention to getting to a highly satisfied customer, you don't close the loop, and you can kill yourself that way too. But that's kind of two sides of the same coin type of thing.
All right. So in all of our conversations so far, there's been one central dynamic, and that's sales mindset.
Yes.
So if you had to tighten up the sales mindset into 2 or 3 core key elements, whether I'm an internal business analyst trying to design future state solutions, or I'm a product manager who's trying to launch a disruptive product, what is that sales mindset that they need to include as they look?
Yeah. Okay. So, the very first part is, are you solving a big enough problem? And we've talked all about that.
Are you solving a problem?
Are you solving a problem? And is that problem big enough for your customer, whoever it is, to make the effort to adopt that product?
To exchange time for value, like to exchange money for value or time for value. Okay.
And, and fundamentally, are they motivated even enough to get started, right?
Yep.
Is there enough pain in their life associated with the current solution to the problem enough to get them to try something different? Because, from a competitive standpoint, we always talk about, in the external environment, we talk about what the competitive positioning is. Well, there's only one competitive positioning for a launching of a disruptive product or a disruptive. It's status quo. Can you get people to change their behavior? That's always number one. So the first, the most critical thing is, are we solving or do we have a problem big enough to get our customers to just even try to use our technology or adopt it?
And the first measurement you have for that is if people take your call or call you back.
Well, if you think about customers, well, that's what the MVP is completely designed around, right?
Yeah.
Building an MVP so we can start getting that feedback from the marketplace as early as possible. Well, in my world, I work in the regulated world where I really can't build an MVP. I can't go through the FDA 4 times a year. I've got one shot at doing that, right? So I got to find proxies for getting that quality of data.
The thing about your world that should cross over is even MVPs can be difficult because there's a misinterpretation of what an MVP is. Some are overbuilt, some are underbuilt. If you have the mindset with the agile market entry process by which you do this without even having an MVP.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I almost 100% of the time I do it without MVP.
Okay. So
that's why I call this proxy MVP, right?
Yeah. So you are the MVP in the fact that in your mind you have
so the MVP, David, is the fundamental principle under MVP is ask someone for money for their product. That is the fundamental idea around the MVP. Let's get it and ask them money, because if we can get them to pay us, that gives us the highest quality feedback we can get around whether anybody's going to buy this thing. So in an environment or a point in time where you can't actually do that, you got to figure out what proxies are for money. For a surgeon and a doctor, their time is a huge proxy for them paying me for it.
Yep.
But for each type of customer, there's always a proxy like that. Here's another proxy.
I'm sorry. Keep going. I do want keep going. That's good.
That's okay. So you can ask your sponsor, your customer, to then sit down with you and map out their whole process for doing what you're currently doing today, so you can start figuring out where you fit into their process and where you can improve it. That can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. One is it's asking for their time and commitment to help you build your product. Number 1. Number 2, you start understanding their world at a much, much deeper level when you get to that level, which means you're now starting to understand their problem from their perspective. You'll see many different problems that you can help them solve that you may actually already be able to help them solve that you're not aware of at that point in time. And the other thing you're doing is you're pre-launching your product. You're starting to understand the adoption side. So prior to actually getting them to use it, you can actually de-risk it for both you and them going into the quote unquote launch of that product. So there's many different ways to get to this proxy for the MVP if you understand what the intent of the MVP model is to do. And the fundamental intent is to get the highest quality data you can around whether your customer is actually going to buy your product, which is
and remember, to buy is a proxy. Money, what is the other proxy? And so for me, internal project management is time. Will they use it?
Time is one. Can you borrow a team member, which is again time? But can you steal a team member from someone that really thinks it's a big problem? Here's another interesting proxy, and I look at this for my customer discovery interviews. Is I kind of wait for the customer to start pulling me towards them. And what do I mean by that? I'll be in an interview with a surgeon, and he may say to me, hey, can I invest in this? Without me asking.
And that tells you something. Oh, my gosh.
That tells you something huge. Or he says, hey, do you need a chief medical officer? Or do you have your first clinical trial site? I'm really interested in this.
So there are cues
those are cues from them those are buying cues.
And here's the thing that I think make sure people understand: nothing's built yet.
Nothing's built yet. Correct.
Nothing's built yet.
Correct.
So we have a question here, and it's a little off par, but I think we should answer it. And we'd love to have more questions, folks. We got probably 3 to 5 more minutes. Can a person become a project manager and a sales manager at the same time? If yes, how much time it can take? So the thing is that we are talking about process. it's a process, right? So a project manager is a process. A sales manager is a process.
Correct.
So if you want to be both, you can be both. You can be, but you have to learn both processes.
Correct. And I would also say if you're starting from a project manager standpoint and your job is being responsible for launching a disruptive idea or a disruptive product, I think you should already be a sales manager. You should be adopting this mindset. You should be leading sales before you ever have a product to
See,
sell.
that's the thing. A project.
Here.
So really, from this question, which might seem a little bit off, is that we all hate sales, but we all have to be salespeople. And disruptive solution definement, we have to wear our sales hat first.
And we need to be wearing our sales hat early. Before we start building a product, we should be wearing our sales hat and we should be selling. Now, I must tell you, this customer discovery is like the ultimate way of inquiry selling. Because, I mean, I'm looking for, if I do 10 discovery interviews or 15 discovery interviews, if 2 or 3 of those interviews don't turn into self-generated sales conversations, when I say self-generated, I don't sell at all in my discovery interviews. It's like a cardinal rule because I'm building trust with that partner.
Yeah.
I'm not, and I tell them up front it's not a sales call, so I can't sell. But if I don't get some of these messages, at least 3 or 4 of them saying they want to buy the product, they want to invest in the product, the things we talked about. If I don't get that, then the red flag goes up for me. But this is kind of the ultimate way of doing sales by just understanding and questioning the customer.
So I'm getting so excited
in their world.
And I'm getting so excited because my pet peeve professionally now is that we waste so much time building stuff that is useless. Chris, remember you and I talked about the job building a company by looking at all the product launches that failed.
Yes.
Bringing them in and actually repositioning them and doing agile market entry. We could probably sell some of them.
Oh, I think there's there's millions of products out there. Here's the other one, David. Big companies that buy in innovative products from startup companies, then they die. I think 50% of those die not because it wasn't the right product for the right market. It's because they didn't know how to sell that product effectively.
That's an internal issue as well. See,
David, that's the beauty of what we're talking about here. From a sales perspective, and I'm writing a book on this, and I had a line in my book saying, this is like good news, bad news. We know the problem. We've created a huge problem selling, but the beauty is we're the problem, not the market.
Exactly. We're not.
We have 100% control over solving this problem. There's all sorts of market-based
knowing that the problem is useless and doesn't need to be solved.
Well, that's part of the internal problem is we build a product that the market doesn't want. That's really good news too. But I think on the flip side of this, I think 50% of the time we build a product the market might want if we know how to approach the market appropriately.
So where's your head at with regard to a canvas or playbook related to this mindset? Have you looked at that yet? Have you thought about it? Is there something you can build for that?
So, yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because we've spent a lot of time on this discussion talking more of the customer discovery, the pre-sales type of stuff. And honestly, we've made a ton of progress over the last 15 or 20 years. We talk about design thinking, agile, lean, customer discovery, jobs to be done from Clay Christensen. The one place where we've done very little of no work is on the sales process to support this disruptive world.
Yeah, because here's me. I love to be this pontificator on the mountain that says, "Oh, I see this trend, and because I see this trend, then we should build for it." This is what happens all the time. I'm one of those product managers that suffers from this, right?
Yeah, but Dave, when we talk about trends, we're generally talking from the top down. That's not how markets are built. Markets are all built from the
Oh yeah.
Now,
So
it doesn't mean,
getting to the
doesn't
person
mean we don't pay attention to those big trends, because those big trends are important, but that's not how you build markets. Markets are built one customer at a time from the bottom up. That's how
so
they're
as
built.
both external or internal. The thing is, we have to understand, if we spent and we built training and skill development on how to use a sales mindset to ferret out what the need is and if there's value in that. And Trent talks about this. Nothing is a bigger waste than building features that won't be used. I'm at a point where I can't stand doing any work that I think has no value.
Yeah.
I start freaking out.
Yeah.
And
no,
so
I agree. And I think let me put on, try to think from a product manager's hat. Go do this work. You will kill half of your projects before they start because you understand there's not a big enough problem to be solved out there, which is really, really, really good news. The other thing,
really good news. It's phenomenal news.
It's great news. The other thing I think you'll find is that you'll start not building. Your initial product will get narrower and narrower to solve a very niche. And this is really how markets are built, David, especially around disruptive. This is where Clay Christensen wrote his book around the innovator's dilemma. All comes from this. But markets are generally penetrated or entered through very small niches and when you grab the small niches, there's two main things that happen. One is you can increase the pain. You pick a market where the pain's so high that they have to adopt. Your product becomes so attractive. That's number one. The other thing is when you do that, entering the market becomes much easier. With an effort that would take 100 effort units to get into now takes 10.
Yeah.
But this is also how big markets are built, because what ends up happening is as soon as you enter that niche market, you're now working from the inside of the market instead of the outside of the market. And that's how you open up big opportunities. Once you're on the inside, it's much easier to go big than trying to go big from the outside.
Yeah,
so I think product managers are going to do. One is they're going to get rid of projects much quicker and much more efficiently. Number two is their initial projects and the products they're going to build for become narrower and narrower to very narrow sets of problems that are really high value. And that means that then your product development becomes very specific, very pointed, so you can get it to those customers. This is, if you think about the MVP model, this is the way the MVP model should be built from. It's not the way it's really taught, but this is the way you should build the MVP model, is this direction as well.
It's really interesting. And from a SDLC perspective, it's hard to do that because everybody wants to build a base system or put a cost system in and pop it and update it. But there's ways that we can start thinking about, even though we have to do that, just turning on the highest value features. And I'm deep within the sales organization if it's a CRM, and then I only turn on the features based on what the sales team is asking for.
Well, the other thing is when you talk about a product like that, your success isn't based on the initial sale. It's based on adoption over time.
It's based on adoption. I mean,
and
internally,
the only
it's adoption.
way you'll get that traction early enough to get the momentum going is if you go after those big problems. Because, I mean, I'm a sales guy. You put a fucking excuse me, I shouldn't do that, but you put a CRM in front of me, I do not want to use it unless you're solving a big problem. If you're solving a big problem that's going to put money in my pocket, I will use.
Well, this is any other comments, thoughts, or questions before we kick Chris ranting over a crazy time, which I love. So, Chris, what are some of your, so my last thought on this, and I'll give you the last thought as well. Remember, any comments or questions get put into the raffle for the free class is I have learned the hard way that I have to utilize people who are as close to the customer as possible to truly learn what it is that we should be doing, and not doing it because I've seen this trend and this trend is telling me this. So let's just go do it and see what the market says. And with Cloud Institute, I'm actually doing some of that work with the marketing and the sales team very close together and trying to figure out what it is. But we aren't taking that next step, which is just straight up talking to people who we think could be interested with something that we don't have yet, or an idea that we want to launch, but we don't know for sure if we should launch it or not. So that's what I got on it. What are your thoughts on that? Am I way off kilter?
No, I think, well, you know me, David. I'm always going to tell you to go talk to customers that can buy your product. That's always, go early, go often, and go consistently. The closer you get to market, the more you want to, you just got to keep doing it. That's the other thing. This is not a one time and then go build. It's, going back and back and back over and over and over again. And I did. The one thought I will have to say, leave this group with is I want to basically thank this group, because I think in a lot of ways, it came out of the manufacturing world, then got into the DevOps world, and then in the product management world. But a lot of what needs to go on in sales around agility, the products development side of the world has led a lot of this. I was at a conference 5 years ago or so, an Agile conference, and the first thing that hit me was how much my methodology is built around Agile principles.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about Agile at that point in time, but discovery, iterative, sprints, customer focused, bottom up, not first top down. The one thing that shocked me at that meeting was there was no sales represented in the whole meeting. There wasn't a salesperson there. And that would, I'll tell you, if I were you, find someone on your sales team that is interested, and they're out there in the sales team, they're interested on the product development side, make partners with them, work, collaborate with them, and make them part of your team, because they're touching the customers every day.
And internally, if you're a project manager who's thinking about moving into product management, partnering with a business analyst who's doing a lot of this work to help you get ears to what these stakeholders are looking for. The stakeholders are looking for would be positive. And internally speaking, it's about not managing your stakeholders. It's about embracing and listening to your stakeholders. All right, Chris, let's close this out. And Laura, I don't know exactly sure. Do I just leave studio? I think that's what we do. Unless Laura shuts us down. Thank you all very much for participating. Really enjoyed it. Chris, thank you for being a part of this.
Always fun hanging out with you, David.
All right. Bye-bye.